What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another Wednesday night of What's the Word Dirty Bird. I'm gonna give you guys a couple minutes to get into the chat, but we got a lot to talk about tonight. We're gonna talk about the Super Bowl. We're gonna talk about the Atlanta Falcons, some Atlanta Falcons news, and where our Falcons are headed during this off season. And then, of course, we're gonna do some fan Q&A. Noah was the first one in the chat. What's going on, Noah? What's up, man? I'm gonna wait for a few more of you guys to come in. But like I said, we're gonna jump in. Um, I see a couple more people joining. What's going on? I appreciate you joining me tonight. He said, "What's up?" Bubba Gump, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me tonight. Mad Mike Sports, what's happening, bro? I appreciate you joining as always. That's my brother. Y'all go over to Mad Mike Sports, hit that like, share, subscribe button. He's on his way to 7,000, if I'm not mistaken. So you guys definitely go hit that like and subscribe button. Darius, what's happening, man? That's my brother-in-law. What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me tonight. Yusuke Knight, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me as well. He said, I called this earlier today, man. You see the Falcons go pass rush heavy in the draft coming up. Yeah, we're going to talk about that tonight, most definitely. Isaac, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me as well. Yeah, Mike said he's on his way to 7,000. So y'all make sure y'all go and show my boy Mike some love, man. He's on his way to 7,000 subscribers and beyond. You guys, I'm on my way to 2,000 subscribers. So if you guys could hit that like, subscribe button, share this content out. Please hit that like button for your boy. There you go, 757 in the building. Yeah, you already know. Yeah, I am from Virginia, so 757 in the building, Hampton Roads area, stand up. The wife in the chat, what's going on, baby? And my bro in the chat, what's happening, VA? I appreciate you joining me tonight. Like I said, you guys, please share out this content. Hit that like button for your boy. Hit that subscribe button if you already haven't. Tony Wright, what's going on, bro? I appreciate you joining me as always. I hope you guys are having a great Wednesday so far. And hope you guys are having a great week. It is hump day, so it's all downhill from here. But we are going to jump right into the first topic of tonight, which we're going to recap. I know it's been a couple days, but we're going to recap Super Bowl 56. I did predict that the Cincinnati Bengals would win the game. I think 30-21 was the score that I predicted. But we all know that the LA Rams did end up winning the Super Bowl on Sunday. So shout out to Sean McVay, Matt Stafford, Odell Beckham, and those guys, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, and all those guys over there for getting the job done. But there's a couple things I want to talk about in the Super Bowl. I really think that the Bengals had their opportunities to win the game against the Rams in that Super Bowl. In the second half, they did come out and score on the first play of the second half, and then they came out and on the next drive got an interception. Woozier came away with an interception off of a drop pass by Skoranek, and that was their chance where they had the momentum to pull away, and they weren't able to do it. The Rams defensive line really ramped it up. Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, all of those guys on that defensive line. Ashawn Robinson at that nose tackle position. They did a really good job in that game of pressuring Joe Burrow. I believe they actually had like 7 sacks, which I heard was like a record for the Super Bowl. And they did also injure Joe Burrow in the game. I believe they say he had like a sprained MCL. He did finish the game because it was a Super Bowl. He toughed it out, but they played really well in that game. The Rams defensive line in the second half took over, and they were able to come away with the trophy. But like I said, the Bengals had their opportunities. I really feel like in the game, they didn't do a good job of sticking with the running game. I talked about that a little bit in my pregame video for the Super Bowl, that they were going to have to use Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine to kind of slow down that pass rush. And I don't think the Bengals did a good job of running the ball. They should have, ran the ball a little bit more. I believe Joe Mixon was running the ball for like 4 yards a carry in the game. So they definitely should have stuck with that running game, especially when they got the lead, to try to slow down that pass rush. And I think that they did a poor job. Zach Taylor, I believe his name is, the coach of the Cincinnati Bengals, their offensive play caller. He didn't do a good job to me of running the ball enough, and he didn't do a good job of just doing quick like screen plays and things of that nature to kind of relieve that pressure. Joe Burrow was holding on to the football a little bit too long early in the game. He was getting rid of the football, 2 and 3 step drops, hurrying up, getting rid of the football, getting the ball into his playmakers' hands. But as the game wore on in the second half, he started to go back to what he did in the regular season, where he was trying to push the ball down the field, and Joe Burrow was holding on to the ball too long. And we all know that the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line is not good. Joe Burrow was sacked 70 times this year, playoffs and regular season. I think he was the most sacked quarterback in the league last year, surprisingly. So I definitely think that this Super Bowl showed us that the trenches matter. As we always talk about it, everything starts up front. If you can't block and if you can't stop the run, it's going to be hard to win in this league. And I believe the Cincinnati Bengals, their defense is severely underrated. They showed on Sunday why they're one of the better young defenses, up and coming defenses. Their defensive line, I talked about Trey Hendrickson, I talked about Sam Hubbard, DJ Reader, BJ Hill. All of those guys on that defensive line, to me, did a really, really good job of shutting down the Rams running game. I wish they would have gotten more pressure on Matthew Stafford in that second half, and they kind of struggled to get pressure. They did a good job of stopping the run, because I believe the Rams only ran the ball for like 1.5 yards a carry or something like that. So they did a good job of slowing down that rushing attack of the LA Rams, and tried to make them one-dimensional where they had to throw the ball. But in the end, it wasn't enough. I know a lot of people, the Cincinnati Bengals fans, are going to point to that pass interference call late in the game, where their linebacker, they basically called a holding penalty or pass interference against Cooper Kupp, which I think in that scenario, I wouldn't have called that pass interference. But at the end of the day, you can't let it come down to that last play. Like, you can't let it come down to the last drive, because at the end of the day, they still had a chance. Joe Burrow still had a chance with like a minute 30 left in the game to go down and drive. And really, I think we have to give credit to Sean McVay on that last drive, on that last scoring drive for the Rams. I really think the game changer was Sean McVay allowing Matthew Stafford to go no huddle in the second half. In that last drive, when he threw the ball basically every time to Cooper Kupp up and down the field, they did a good job of going no huddle, changing the tempo of the game, and not allowing the Bengals to huddle up, not allowing them to do those exotic pressures and run any exotic defense. They made them basically keep the same 11 guys on the field. And once they went no huddle on that last drive, to me, that's what really changed the game. Before that, the Bengals, it was pretty much was a defensive struggle. After that first initial touchdown by the Bengals and that field goal by the Bengals, it pretty much was a defensive struggle. Both the Rams and the Bengals, they were going 3 and out, because the defense had picked up. But I think in that last drive, Sean McVay did a good job of allowing Matthew Stafford basically to go no huddle and try to put the Cincinnati Bengals defense on their heels, which they were able to do. But with that being said, I do want to jump back into the chat really quick and say what's up to a couple people that may have joined. Millie Mills, what's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me tonight. If you guys haven't hit that subscribe or that like button, please hit that like button for your boy. Michael Walker, I appreciate you joining me tonight as well. And Eric McDowell Jr., I appreciate you joining me as well. Yes, Cincy did look really, really good. They are a young team, and they do have a chance to get back to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow is only in his second season. But as we know as Falcons fans, and as we've seen in the past, like the Dan Marinos of the world who only played in one Super Bowl, look at guys like Aaron Rodgers. He's only played in one Super Bowl. He got there pretty early in his career and won the first Super Bowl, but he's never been back. And now he's 13, 14, 15 years down the road. So when you get to the Super Bowl, you have to capitalize on your opportunities. I do think the Cincinnati Bengals have a really good young core, but it's no guarantee that they're going to be able to get back on that stage. But I definitely think that they have the pieces and the nucleus to build upon. I think they're going to have to get a little bit better, especially on their offensive line. They're going to have to get better in the trenches because Joe Burrow is not going to last if they don't protect him. I mean, we've seen with Matt Ryan over the last couple years, when you don't have an offensive line, that begins to wear on you. And Joe Burrow is somebody that already had a torn ACL, now has a sprained MCL in his other knee. So they're going to have to do a better job of protecting their asset. He was a number one pick coming out of LSU, but they're going to have to do a better job at protecting him going forward if they want to be Super Bowl contenders. And if they want Joe Burrow to have a long career, they're definitely going to have to do a better job protecting him, getting him some more offensive linemen, and also building upon that defense. Because I really think that the offense of Cincinnati is really talented. Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, all of those guys, Uzama at the tight end position, Joe Mixon. I mean, they really talented in their skill position, but they're definitely going to have to do a better job at bringing in more guys in the draft and in free agency to shore up their offensive line. If they do that, I feel like that was their biggest Achilles heel. They kind of got away with it all playoffs. They were able to escape in that game against the Tennessee Titans where they gave up 9 sacks, which rarely happens. And Joe Burrow kind of played hero ball, and their defense did a good job of coming up with timely stops. But when it was all said and done, when they needed a stop against the Rams, they couldn't come up with that final stop. So at the end of the day, they're going to have to get better in the trenches on that offensive line if they want to win a Super Bowl going forward. But you guys let me know what you think of Cincinnati. Do you guys think that Cincinnati possibly has a chance of winning the Super Bowl or getting back on that stage? Or do you guys think even the Rams, do y'all think they have a chance of repeating next year's Super Bowl champs? I think the Rams are really talented as well. Odell Beckham did go down, I believe they said, with an ACL tear. So I wish him nothing but the best. But I'm glad to see Aaron Donald and all of those guys, definitely Matthew Stafford, get a ring because he's one of those guys that they kind of compare to Matt Ryan. I talked about it a couple shows ago about Matthew Stafford being like him and Matt Ryan being really close. And I feel like both of those guys are really underrated quarterbacks. And Matthew Stafford, he's still writing his story. Like a lot of people, it's been debated this week of whether he's a Hall of Famer or not. I think right now it's kind of too early to tell. Right now, I don't believe Matthew Stafford is a Hall of Famer. But if he wins another Super Bowl, or if he continues to make his case and get, make deep playoff runs and things of that nature, I definitely think that they have a chance of, he definitely has a chance of being a Hall of Famer. I don't think he's solidified as a Hall of Famer yet, but I think if he's able to continue to win over the next couple years and continue to build his accolades, like maybe he wins the MVP, maybe he wins the Super Bowl MVP in the future, or maybe he ends up being top 5 in passing yards and things of that nature. I definitely think if he gets some of that under his belt, maybe a couple all pros under his belt, I definitely think he has a chance to be a Hall of Famer. But at this point, I don't think he's quite a Hall of Famer yet. But I was really impressed to see Matthew Stafford go to the Rams in his first season, just like Tom Brady did with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He went to the Rams, a totally different system under Sean McVay, and he basically proved what we've been saying all of this time with Matt Ryan is if you put a quarterback in position where he has the pieces around him, a good defense, a good head coach, a good front office, and he has weapons, he showed you it doesn't take you being necessarily an elite quarterback to win a Super Bowl. In that game, I don't believe that Matt Stafford played well, but he played well enough to win, and his defense did their part. His special teams, they did their part, and the head coach, Sean McVay, and the coaching staff did a really solid job. So I definitely think that Matthew Stafford is heading in an upward trajectory, and I think he definitely has a chance to possibly be a future Hall of Famer. But I definitely think winning this Super Bowl helps his legacy and basically proves all of the doubters wrong, the media wrong, all of the people in Detroit that said that Matthew Stafford wasn't a winner, couldn't get it done on the big stage. He's pretty much shut everybody up as far as him not being a winner. He proved that in his first, first time with a stable organization, he proved that he could get the job done. He got all the way to the Super Bowl and he got the job done. So I was really impressed with Matthew Stafford and getting the job done and winning the Super Bowl. But I do want to jump back into the chat really quick. I don't know if I said shout outs to Brian Peoples. What's going on, man? I appreciate you joining me tonight. Let's see. What's going on, Andrew? He says Burrow is a good quarterback, better than Stafford. Yeah, I definitely think that. To me, Joe Burrow played better than Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl, to be quite honest. And I think Joe Burrow has a chance to have a better career than a guy like Matthew Stafford because he's extremely young at this point, only in his second year. But what scares me a little bit about Joe Burrow is those injuries. Like the Cincinnati Bengals are going to have to shore up that offensive line and get him some protection because we've seen guys like Andrew Luck with the Colts. We've seen the David Carrs of the world with the Houston Texans back in the day where they didn't protect them and they didn't last long. So hopefully Joe Burrow, he gets protection and hopefully he does have a long NFL career. But I definitely think he's also heading in the right direction. And I was really impressed with Joe Burrow as well. He's a guy that's always composed in the pocket. Pretty much is never phased, even when he's being sacked and things of that nature, or is under pressure. He seems to always, be relaxed, cool, calm, and collected. But that's pretty much my 2 cents as far as the Super Bowl. Like I said, I was happy for Aaron Donald, happy for Matthew Stafford, happy for Odell Beckham and those guys for getting, their first Super Bowl trophy, their first Super Bowl ring. But Cincinnati had their opportunities, but they kind of squandered their opportunities in that game. And at the end of the day, I'm not going to blame the refs. As much as a lot of people want to put it on the refs, I'm not going to put that game on the refs because the Cincinnati had the opportunity to put the game away and they didn't do it. So with that being said, now we enter the off season and I want to jump into the next topic of the night. And the next topic we're going to talk about is some Atlanta Falcons news. And in Atlanta Falcons news, Atlanta Falcons today released or cut Dante Fowler Jr. You guys know that I'm a huge Dante Fowler Jr. fan. He was one of my favorite defensive players on our Atlanta Falcons. Definitely one of my favorite or my favorite edge rusher on our team. He did lead our team in sacks last year with 4.5 sacks. But I'm not surprised with Dante Fowler Jr. being cut or released because we all know that Dante Fowler Jr. was a guy when he signed that was a Dan Quinn disciple. He was a guy that played with Dan Quinn or played for Dan Quinn at the University of Florida when he was in college. Dan Quinn was a mentor of his. And when Thomas Dimitroff and Dan Quinn was here that last season before both of them were fired, they did sign Dante Fowler to a 3-year deal, $45 million. He did take a pay cut when Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith came in. He was kind of on a prove it deal last year, and he was only able to get 4.5 sacks. Prior year with Dan Quinn in 2020, he only had 3.5 sacks, if I'm not mistaken. So he had a total of 7.5 sacks over 2 seasons. I'm disappointed in the production, and I think that's the main reason why Dante Fowler Jr. was released. I believe if he would have had a better season last year, they may have thought about keeping him around. But being that he didn't produce, one thing I can say about this new regime is that they're not going to put up with lackluster play. I really feel like the main issues with Dante Fowler were injury history. Like he's a player that's been injured since he's been on the Falcons, whether it was due to him being out for COVID, him being out with that ankle injury the first season when he was signed by the Falcons. He just didn't exceed the expectations, or he didn't play up to the expectations that the Falcons had for him. So I definitely wish Dante Fowler Jr. the best. Like I said, he is still one of my favorite edge rushers. But at the end of the day, I'm a fan of the logo. I'm not just a fan of the, for particular players. I am a fan of, the logo of the Atlanta Falcons. I am a fan of the Falcons. So I definitely understand why Dante Fowler Jr. was let go in this case. I think Dante Fowler Jr. moving forward probably will go sign with the Dallas Cowboys because Dan Quinn is the defensive coordinator over there. So I wouldn't be surprised if he signs with the Cowboys, or I wouldn't be surprised if he signs back with the LA Rams because he had his best season playing alongside Aaron Donald, playing alongside those guys over there, and they have a really good pass rush unit. And I can see Dante Fowler fitting in because they play the 3-4, and that's pretty much where you can get the best production out of him. He's a guy that rushed best in a 2-point stance, and I definitely think the Rams could reload and decide that they'll bring him back on a minimum deal, and he'll probably go over there and possibly win try to compete for a championship. Either there or Dallas is where I see Dante Fowler Jr. landing, but I definitely can see him in that pass rush. That rotation that they have of Leonard Floyd, Aaron Donald, Von Miller. I definitely can see him being a guy that they try to bring back because he's familiar with those guys over there. And also Raheem Morris, who is the defensive coordinator for the LA Rams, our former interim coach and former coordinator here with our Atlanta Falcons, is over there with the LA Rams. So because of the familiarity of him knowing the Rams very well, I could definitely see a Dante Fowler Jr. either going to Dallas or going back to the LA Rams. But with that being said, I also want to just jump right back in the chat and just see what you guys are saying. And I know a couple more people may have jumped in. Let's see here. Jonathan Bell says, bro, it definitely was a surprise cut kind of for me, but at the same time, he wasn't holding up his end. And I completely agree. Dante Fowler didn't hold up his end of the bargain, even though he was on a prove it deal last season. He just didn't get, he didn't make the cut. He missed too many sacks, too many opportunities last year where he had opportunities for tackles for loss, a whole bunch of at least maybe 4 or 5 sacks last year, if not more, where he was right there, could have made a tackle for loss or could have, sacked the quarterback. I can put a count on maybe all 5 fingers of how many times in that Buffalo Bills game where he had opportunities against Josh Allen where he should have been able to come away with a sack and he didn't do it. So at the end of the day, it's a business. I don't care. This regime, one thing I like about this regime that we currently have, brought in with Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith is they don't play favorites. They care about production. If you're not producing, they're going to cut you or they're going to release you. And that's something that we really didn't see with the last regime with Dan Quinn and with Thomas Dimitroff. They kind of stuck with the guys that they trusted, and they kind of let guys get away with underproducing or not producing. And that was kind of some of the problems that we had with the last regime after going to the Super Bowl. I'll say the last 2 or 3 seasons that we had Dan Quinn, the guys just didn't produce, and he refused to bench guys. They refused to cut guys when they weren't producing. And I think in this new regime, Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot was making it clear and putting everybody in that locker room on notice. If you don't produce, you're going to get released or you're going to get cut. So in this case, I think that they're sending the right message, especially because Dante Fowler didn't get the job done. So at the end of the day, I don't care how much you like a player. If the player is not producing, you have to, especially because of the tight salary cap that we're under, you have to produce, based off of your contract. And Dante Fowler didn't do that. So with that being said, I wish him nothing but the best. But the next thing I kind of want to talk about, and before I do, I want to give a quick shout out to my boy, 6-Man K Styles. You guys go over to his channel. Go show him some love. He's on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So y'all go show my boy some love. He does shows. He's probably one of the hard. Him and Mike are probably the hardest working in show business. He does shows, I believe, Monday nights, Tuesday nights, Thursday and Friday nights. So you guys definitely go over there and check K Styles out. Him and Mad Mike, they be putting out shows and doing live shows all the time. So you definitely want to go ahead and show them some love and hit that like and subscribe button on his channel. He's on the road to 1,000, and I appreciate you tuning in tonight, bro. And I also want to shout out Just J Rock. What's going on, man? He's a Twitch guy. Y'all go check him out as well. He does the gaming and things of that nature. So I appreciate you joining as well. He says, Jew, I know you hurt, but your man's got to go. Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, you guys know I love me some Dante Fowler Jr., but at the end of the day, it's about production. Like, as much as I love players, if you're not producing, I want to win at the end of the day. like I said, I'm a fan of the logo. I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. So as much as I love Dante Fowler and wish that they brought him back, because I do believe you need a veteran guy on the roster, an edge rusher, and he was our most productive pass rusher. As much as we want to say, as much as we might want to say, um, Dante Fowler didn't produce. At the end of the day, he's still our best pass rusher, because we had guys like Steven Means, who didn't have a single sack on the season, that was a starter. We had guys like Ogundeji, who I believe had maybe 2 sacks on the season. Even though he's a rookie, he's still developing. I do think that Ogundeji is going to be a pretty solid player. We need to bring in as many pass rushers as possible, because right now, the struggle is real when it comes to our defensive line. And you guys know I'm huge on talking about the trenches. If it was anything that we noticed or that stood out in the Super Bowl and that stood out in the playoffs, was definitely you have to have pass rush and you have to have weapons on the offensive side of the ball. So with that, I kind of want to segue into the next topic. But before I do, I appreciate the $5 super chat. The wife says, now that y'all got rid of Dante Fowler, who should the Falcons spend their money on? This is a good question. To be honest, I'm not too sure who's out there on the free agent market. I did see Magnus had mentioned something about Preston Smith and Zadarius Smith. Both of those guys are edge rushers for the Green Bay Packers, that I think both guys are free agents. But I don't know. I have to go and look at the list of the free agents, and maybe I'll do that on my next show. Or if you guys know in the chat, y'all can let me know some of the edge rushers that are currently free agents. But right now, the Falcons don't have much cap space. Depending on what we do with guys like Calvin Ridley, if we're able to trade him, we possibly can make some more cap space. Or if we extend Matt Ryan or extend Grady Jarrett, maybe that'll create a little bit more cap space. But right now, we're kind of stuck as far as being able to go out and sign a big name guy, unless Terry Fontenot goes out and maneuvers some of this cap. So a good question, but I'm not too sure who we may go after. But I do want to segue into the next topic, which the next topic is Atlanta Falcons next steps. Like, what's next? Because we are entering free agency, which starts next month, in the month of March. And then we have the draft coming up in April. So great segue from the wife with the super chat, because I do want to talk about kind of where the Falcons are headed. Now that we see that Dante Fowler Jr. is the first domino that kind of has failed, or that kind of has dropped, we now see that I think in the draft, we're going to go heavy in the trenches. Like, we're going to possibly draft multiple edge rushers and possibly at least one defensive tackle. So I can see the Falcons using 3 of their draft picks this upcoming draft on the trenches, on the defensive side of the ball. Like, you have to go out and bring in edge rushers, because now that you're down Dante Fowler Jr., I believe Steven Means is a free agent. Brandon Copeland's a free agent. I think John Kaminsky may still have like a year left on his deal. You have Grady Jarrett. You have Marlon Davidson. Tyler Davidson probably will get cut or released. So you don't have much depth. You have Ogundeji, who's another edge rusher, the rookie, but we don't have much depth. So I think in the draft, you're going to have to go defensive heavy. You're going to have to go in and bring in pass rush, no doubt. And at the end of the day, you guys know I always talk about strength in numbers. Like, I believe that you never can have enough pass rushers. And that would have been one of the reasons why I wouldn't have cut Dante Fowler, not because I like him, but I wouldn't have cut him because I feel like he wasn't making that much money. And at the end of the day, because of our cap situation, I think it's going to be really, really tough for the Falcons to go out and get a big name edge rusher unless they trade or, find some way to finagle this thing. I think it's going to be really, really tough for the Falcons to bring in another edge rusher unless they come in, bring somebody in on a 1-year prove it deal. I think it's going to be hard for us to go out and sign a premier pass rusher. So I think in the draft, you're going to have to look at Kayvon Thibodeau. You're going to have to look at the kid out of Michigan that I did a video on. You're going to have to Jobo. You're going to have to look at him in the draft. Jordan Davis. All of those guys in the draft that I've talked about. Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. It's a lot of a lot of good defensive linemen in this draft, but I think we're going to have to go defensive line heavy and defensive heavy in this draft because we don't really have much pass rush help. Last year, the Falcons were the worst team in the league as far as sack numbers. We had the worst or the lowest amount of sacks in the league last year. So I think it's going to be very important in this draft that you go out and you bring in more pass rushers. The next thing that I think we're going to have to do in this draft is bring in weapons. Like I talked about, if you looked at this playoff run, it's two things that stood out. The first thing that stood out was the pass rush in the trenches, the offensive line, defensive line. The next thing that stood out to me was having like weapons, wide receivers, running backs. Wide receivers, because it's a passing league now, and because everybody are playing like a spread offense where they're opening things up, the Falcons are going to have to go out and bring in more wide receivers because we're shorthanded on the wide receivers as well. The only wide receiver, from my understanding, that's under contract right now is Frank Darby, the rookie. So you don't have much help on the defensive line or in the wide receiver position. But if you looked at the playoffs, the teams that were in the Super Bowl, you look at the Bengals with Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. You looked on the other side of the ball, you had Odell Beckham, Cooper Kupp, Tyler Higbee, who was injured, the tight end for the Rams. Also, Robert Woods. A lot of people forget Robert Woods is also a really good wide receiver that plays for the Rams. So they're loaded in the when it comes to the wide receivers and the weapons. And they had a two-headed monster in the backfield, or a three-headed monster with Henderson, with Sony Michel, and with Cam Akers in the backfield for the Rams. And then you had Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine with the Bengals. So if you look at pretty much all of the teams that were in the playoffs for the most part, other than the 49ers, most of the teams are loaded when you talk about weapons. You have to have weapons. You look at the Dallas Cowboys with the, Michael Gallup, Amari Cooper, Zeke Elliott, Tony Pollard, and the list goes on and on. Like, they have those weapons. So the Falcons, we're going to have to add to our weaponry. Like, we do still have Kyle Pitts, but I believe you're going to have to bring in a Treylon Burks. You're going to have to bring in a George Pickens. It's a lot of guys in this draft, like as far as wide receivers that I've been looking at, and I have a couple more prospect videos that I have to drop. But I think the next step for our Atlanta Falcons in this free agency and in the draft, they're going to have to go heavy at bringing in wide receiver and running backs, and they're going to have to go heavy on the defensive line. I think you may bring in maybe like a couple offensive linemen maybe in the free agency, or maybe you draft one or two offensive linemen as well. But I feel like the priority for our Falcons going into this draft is going to have to be wide receiver, defensive linemen, nose tackles, and edge rushers. And you're going to have to bring in running backs. Those are like the top three priorities for our Atlanta Falcons if they want to be a team that's going to compete for the playoffs and compete for championships moving forward. You have to shore up the trenches, and you have to shore up the weapons around Matt Ryan. Like it showed with Matthew Stafford. I do think that Matt Ryan already has solidified himself as a Hall of Famer. But if you want, him later on in his career to be able to win a Super Bowl, the Rams showed us that you have to have a complete team. And I do want to jump into the chat because I know I've been kind of rambling, and I want to hear what you guys are talking about in the chat as well. Let's see here, and shout out to Popcorn Movies and Games. He said, let's focus on the trenches. And that's exactly what I'm saying. Like, the Falcons have to zero in the trenches. Like, that's going to be the most important thing. The defensive line has to improve. You have to be able to rush the passer in this league. You have to be able to protect the passer and run block in this league. If you can't do those things, those are fundamental in winning football games. If you can't move another man against his will, you're going to struggle to win games. Let's see here. Millie Mills, he said, what about Karlaftis? I like Karlaftis as well, and I'm going to do a video on him. He's also on my draft board. Karlaftis is the edge rusher out of Purdue. He gives me vibes, Trey Hendrickson vibes, that plays for the Cincinnati Bengals. He's a dog. So I definitely think that Karlaftis, he's not the most athletic guy, but he plays with a really, really high motor, and he's a really big guy, 6'5", 270 pounds. He's a really, really good edge rusher, and he's also a guy that can play the 3 tech as well. So I definitely think that Karlaftis is going to be tough, and he could possibly be a guy that the Falcons draft as well. But I think the Falcons are going to have to double dip. They're going to have to go out and get um, multiple rushers in this or multiple defensive linemen in this draft. Like, I don't think they can come away with just one edge rusher or one defensive lineman. I think we're going to have to select at least the bare minimum. I think we're going to have to come away with at least 2 to 3 guys in the trenches, preferably at least 3 guys, because you still have the free agency where you can possibly bring in a veteran pass rusher, or you can bring in a veteran defensive tackle, like you've seen with BJ Hill, who the Bengals picked up in free agency. DJ Reader was a guy that they picked up from the Houston Texans for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we've seen, those guys were, really, really crucial to that pass rush of the Cincinnati Bengals, and crucial in shutting down the run. Like, those big guys, they did a number on the LA Rams offensive line. Larry Turner says, what about Alex Lindstrom, center from Boston College? Put him next to his brother. Yeah, this is Chris Lindstrom's brother that played at Boston College. He is a solid center. But personally, Larry, I don't know if I would go and take Alex in this case, because we have 2 centers. We have Hennessy, and then you brought in Drew Dahlman. So I don't know how many centers you actually need on this roster. I really think at this point, the Falcons are going to have to develop some of these guys. Like, I know I like the chemistry that Alex and Chris Lindstrom probably have because they're brothers, and I think that would be great if we can bring them in. But if you do that, what are you going to do with the guys that you already have, like Dahlman and like Lindstrom, and Hennessy? What are you going to do with those guys? So at some point, we can't continue to waste like draft capital. I feel like you're going to have to start developing your draft picks. So that was the reason last year they kind of gave Drew Dahlman some snaps in some of those games, and he played pretty much the whole preseason because they were trying to see what they had. So I think at some point you got to just allow these guys to go out there and play, and you kind of gonna have to work with these guys. Like, at the end of the day, I think if Alex Lindstrom kind of falls in the draft, maybe they go after him if they think that he's gonna be like an upgrade over what we already have. But personally, I would just stick with what we have, Hennessy and Dahlman. I think those guys, I would stick with those guys. What's going on? The Smoke, I don't know if I actually gave you a shout out, man. What's up? I appreciate you tuning in tonight. And if it's your first time in the chat, or the first time watching one of my live videos or live shows, please let me know in the chat as well, or in the comment section, that this is your first time tuning in. We welcome all NFL fans. You don't have to be an Atlanta Falcons fan to tune into the channel or tune into the live shows, but I think I see a few new names. So I appreciate you guys tuning in, and I appreciate you guys hitting the like button and subscribe button and continuing to share this content. Tony Wright says, did you get a chance to look at film on Christian Watson, North Dakota State? We must draft him with our second round draft pick. I actually did get to check him out, Tony. I appreciate you sending that name over to me. I think it was in one of my comments. You commented on one of my videos, and I did check him out, and I put him or added him to my draft board, and I'll do a video on him as well. Christian Watson is a really solid prospect. I like the size. He's like 6'4", 6'5", 210 to 215 pounds. And he's a guy that's explosive. The only thing that kind of scares me about Christian Watson is he played for the North Dakota State. That's the only thing that kind of makes me a little bit nervous, that he didn't play against top competition, but he dominated on the level that he was at. And we've seen guys come in like Carson Wentz that played for North Dakota State. We know that North Dakota State is one of the best, if not the best, in the FCS. They're one of the best in their division as far as they win championships all the time, and they produce pretty good prospect. So I definitely think that Christian Watson could be a guy the Falcons go after, because you guys know that Arthur Smith prefers big body wide receivers. We know we got a lot of small wide receivers this year. We had the Zacchaeuses of the world. Russell Gage is not the biggest guy. And we had Calvin Ridley, who's not the biggest guy. So I think the Falcons are going to have to go out and bring in bigger physical wide receivers like the A.J. Browns that played for Arthur Smith in Tennessee, like the Julio Jones with the bigger frame that can run those more physical routes where they're not afraid to go across the middle and take punishment, because we know Arthur Smith prefers his wide receivers to be able to block in the running game, and he prefers his wide receivers to be able to be physical, go across the middle, and be able to run after catch. And that's something that when I watched Christian Watson's video or his highlights, he was one of the guys that he was good at run after catch. I mean, end the rounds, they lined him up in the backfield. I mean, he did a lot of different things that I was really impressed with for his size. He ran the ball really, really well, caught the ball really well, really well from what I've seen in his highlights. So I definitely think that he's a guy that they might look at. And surprisingly, I was, really surprised when I watched this tape of how well he looked on tape. So I definitely think that he'll be a guy that the Falcons should definitely take a look at. And we kind of already entered into the fan Q&A section. So if you guys want to drop your questions in, I'm kind of already jumping in the chat and getting you guys questions, but definitely drop your questions. If it's draft related, if it's Falcons related in free agency, you guys just drop your comments and questions. But I really appreciate, like I said, you guys tuning in as always. But let's see here. J Rock. Let's see. J Rock says, how you feel about Kyle Hamilton? He reminds me of Justin Simmons from the Broncos. Kyle Hamilton is another guy that's on my draft board. I think that he's a freak of nature. He's really big, like 6'3", 220 pounds. And he's a guy that's really, really good, a solid safety. He's a guy that's versatile. You can use him as like a box linebacker or a box safety. You also can use him kind of to match up one-on-one with tight ends and also match up one-on-one with wide receivers. He did that really well at Notre Dame. So I definitely think that he's a player. If he's on the draft board at 8, we know that Terry Fontenot believes in taking the best player available. So I don't know if that's where they would go. Personally, if it was me, I wouldn't take Kyle Hamilton at 8, because I'm a firm believer in building the trenches first, building from the front to back. I don't believe in building back to front. I think a lot of times people get enamored, or they're really like love the Legion of Boom, and they think that the Legion of Boom, was the reason that the Seattle Seahawks defense was so great. But I think it was that defense collectively is what made the Legion of Boom great. Like, people forget they had the Chris Clemens on the defensive line. They had the Michael Bennett's of the world. They had the Brandon Meebanes and the Red Bryants, and they had, even in the linebacking core, KJ Wright. They had Bobby Wagner. Like, they had guys all over that defense. Like, the front seven was really good. The back end was really good. That defense as a whole was really good. So everybody always talks about the Legion of Boom, Cam Chancellor, Richard Sherman. Those guys were just doing a lot. Richard Sherman was just a guy who was doing a lot of talking and stuff like that. And they kind of gave that defense swagger, the Earl Thomases of the world, Brandon Browner when they had him for a while. But I think people forget it wasn't just that Legion of Boom, secondary that made that defense great. That was just a great all-time defense. Like, they had a good front seven as well. So if you can't rush the passer, I feel like it doesn't really matter if you have an elite secondary. If a quarterback has all day to throw the ball, they're going to find those holes in the zone and things of that nature. So no matter how good you are, based off of the rules of the game, and it's an offensive-driven league at this point because all of the rules favor the offense, I don't care how great your secondary is. If you can't get pressure on the quarterback, that secondary can only hold up for so long. So both of those have to marry up. The defensive line and the secondary have to marry up, and both of them have to play well together as a whole, like as a unit. And I think that's something that the Cincinnati Bengals, even though they didn't have a bunch of top tier names, I think that their defensive line and their secondary, they did a good job of marrying up And you seen in that Super Bowl, even their linebackers, that kid Wilson, number 55, and Jermaine Pratt, their linebackers were really solid as well. So they had a solid defense as a whole. So I think personally, if it's me, I necessarily wouldn't take Kyle Hamilton, but if they think that he's the best player available at that point, I'm not upset with it, because I think it's a lot of guys in this draft. Like this defense, the defensive players in this draft are really, really good. The corners, the top upper echelon corners are really good. Derek Stingley and Sauce Gardner are really good. And then even the linebackers, Nakobe Dean, it's a lot of good defensive players in this draft. Jordan Davis, and the list goes on and on. So I wouldn't be mad at with Kyle Hamilton, but personally, I would prefer the best edge rusher or Jordan Davis at that 8 pick. I know people think that that's too high to take Jordan Davis. Personally, I don't think it's too high, because you have to have that guy next to Grady Jarrett. So we have to start valuing the trenches. Like I know we think with 8 that you got to bring in the top wide receiver or that splash player, but a lot of the times the players that make the difference are the players that kind of go unnoticed, and those are the guys in the trenches. Like Jordan Davis, if he's there at 8, I wouldn't even mind seeing him. And personally, that's where I would lean. I would lean to edge rusher or Jordan Davis at that 8 pick. But like I said, I wouldn't be upset with Kyle Hamilton, because he's really good as well. Let's see. And I appreciate Andrew G says Von Miller, Chandler Jones, Randy Gregory, Jadeveon Clowney, all slated to be free agents. So I appreciate that, because we talked about early in the show, I didn't really know who were the free agents out there for the Falcons that we possibly could go out and take. Let's just looking at it from this list, I wouldn't mind any of these guys. All of these guys are solid pass rushers to me. I think you put them in a good order. I think Von Miller, Chandler Jones are the 2 best from this list. And then Randy Gregory. I would go those 3 before I would go Jadeveon Clowney, because to me, Jadeveon Clowney kind of was a bust. You know, a lot of people had him coming out. You know, they kept showing that hit he made in that bowl game against Michigan against that running back, where he blew the running back up in the backfield. But ever since then, I really was disappointed in Jadeveon Clowney. I thought he was going to be a better prospect coming out. So if you're going to bring in Jadeveon Clowney, you might as well kept Dante Fowler. So I don't think that Jadeveon Clowney is a guy that I would look at. But I appreciate you, Andrew G, of bringing up the guys that were free agents, because I hadn't had time to actually take a look to see who was there in free agency. But my top picks out of this list would be Chandler Jones. Von Miller probably will re-sign with the Rams, but I wouldn't mind having Von Miller or Randy Gregory. He had a really good season for the Cowboys. The only thing that scares me about Randy Gregory is the drug issue. Like, is he gonna get suspended for drug abuse and stuff like that, for smoking and all of that? So with that being said, let's see. Jordan Daniel says, "What's up, Jew? Long time no talk. Hope you've been doing well. We should get Garrett Wilson, man. He's badass, but I doubt he will be there in second round. Maybe trade back for him or something." I haven't had a chance to watch his tape. Garrett Wilson. I think he's the wide receiver out of Ohio State. But I appreciate you tuning in, Jordan. I don't know about Garrett Wilson. I have to go and watch his tape, but I do think that he's a big body wide receiver out of Ohio State, and I've heard good things about him. But before I, put my stamp of approval on him, I do want to go check his tape out and see how well he played or how well he shows up on tape. I'm a firm believer in watching guys on tape. I'm not just a prisoner of the moment as far as seeing these guys in the combine and stuff like that, lifting weights and running 40s and stuff like that. I want to see what you did in college and what type of tape you put out there. But from what I've heard, I heard that Garrett Wilson is really solid. And at this point, I think the Falcons have to go out and at least draft 2 wide receivers in the draft and possibly bring in or bring back Cordell Patterson, bring back Russell Gage. Like, we need as many weapons as possible. But I do appreciate you tuning in, Jordan. And I definitely will add him to my draft board, Garrett Wilson, as well. So I appreciate it. And if you guys have some prospects that you guys would like me to watch their tape and do a video on, please let me know. I'll be happy to also go and do a video on those guys and add those guys to my draft board. Me, Mad Mike, and K Styles are doing a draft prospect board. So you guys check out their channel as well, because they're doing prospect videos and we kind of collaborating on it. So you guys definitely check them out. Check out their draft boards as well. And also shoot them different names of players that you guys want us to do videos on, because they're doing videos and watching tape on these guys as well. Let's see. What is your thoughts on Perron Winfrey, defensive end for Oklahoma? I heard he had a good show for the Senior Bowl. I like him in the second or third round. I didn't get a chance to see him either. So this is another guy that I can add to my draft board. I did hear that he was down at the Senior Bowl doing big things, but I also want to go and check his tape out and see how well if he leaps off the tape when I watch him. But at this point, like I said, we need as much help as possible. So if he's solid, we can use as many pass rushers as possible. Strength in numbers. If the Rams and the Bengals showed us anything, is that a solid defensive line will get you a long way in this league. It'll get you far in the playoffs. You'll make deep playoff runs and possibly win a Super Bowl. And that's what we've seen when the Rams basically plunged and went out and got Von Miller. They already had Aaron Donald, brought in Leonard Floyd 2 years ago and re-signed him. So you need as many pass rushers as possible. Strength in number is what I always preach here on my channel. In the trenches is what we preach. Me, Mike, and K Styles, we always preach that when we're doing our heavy hitter shows during the season. Trenches. The trenches matter. If you have, elite defensive line, if you have multiple guys that can bring pressure, at the end of the day, that's what wins games. And that's pretty much what ended Joe Burrow's Super Bowl hopes and the Bengals Super Bowl chances, was that defensive line play of the Rams. They pretty much suffocated Joe Burrow in that second half. Mike says, your thoughts on Damian Pierce? I believe this is the running back out of Florida, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think Pierce is solid as well. To me, what I like about him is his physicality. He's a smaller running back, but he's stout. Like, he's kind of a version of Mike Davis, but a better version. Or maybe, since we don't want to talk about Mike Davis, because Mike Davis didn't really have a good season last year, I don't want to disrespect the Damian Pierce like that, but I think he also can be like a poor man's Maurice Jones-Drew. If you guys remember Maurice Jones-Drew from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I think he also played with the Raiders when he was in the league. Very small but stout, like a bowling ball, short, stubby, quick, but physical. And that's what I see when I turned on the tape of Pierce. He puts me in the mind of a poor man's Maurice Jones-Drew, or Mike Davis, a physical, smaller running back, but stout and hard to tackle, like breaks a lot of tackles and runs north and south. So I definitely think that he's a guy. I heard the rumors that Arthur Smith and the Falcons were looking at possibly drafting him. Personally, if it had to come down to either Pierce or Spiller, Isaiah Spiller out of Texas A&M, he's the guy that I did a draft prospect video on. I prefer Spiller over Pierce, but I like Pierce as well. I think he's a solid running back. Like I said, he'll bring that physicality, and he'll do what Mike Davis didn't do last year for us, as far as running north and south and being physical. Let's see. He said, they call me Yeezy. What's going on, man? He says, watch Dante Fowler get picked up by the Patriots, lead the NFL in sacks. Everyone becomes great once they lead the Falcons. Devondre Campbell, Raheem Morris, the list goes on and on. And I agree. I think Dante Fowler has the tools. He just has to be in the right system, and he basically just has to stay healthy for real. Like last year, it's no excuses. He didn't produce. I don't want to blame the Falcons organization for his demise, but I think that it helps playing with star players. I mean, we seen with him with the Rams get 11 and a half sacks, and that's because Thanos plays for the Rams. Like when you have Aaron Donald, who basically is getting beating double teams consistently. I mean, yeah. And then you got Von Miller and Leonard Floyd and those guys, those cast of guys around them. And that's the reason why I say we have to build the trenches. We can't just rely on bringing in any one guy. Even if you go out and get like Chandler Jones, you can't rely on just a Chandler Jones or that one elite pass rusher. You have to have guys around him and Grady Jarrett. So you have to have at least, I'll say at least 4 solid pass rushers that can consistently get home. If you don't have 4 guys that can consistently get home, you're going to struggle to get to the quarterback, especially in this league where everybody is, getting rid of the ball really, really quick, and everybody pretty much has 3 solid wide receivers. Like you have to be able to bring pressure and have at least 4 solid pass rushers in rotation. If you don't have a rotation of guys that can get after the passer, you're going to struggle to win in this league. But I definitely agree with you. It seems like pretty much every person that plays with the Falcons and ends up leaving has success, other than Vic Beasley, because we know when Vic Beasley left and Tat McKinley, both of those guys kind of fell off the map. But other than those guys, we have had guys that go on and have better careers once they left the Falcons. Let's see here. And there's a lot of names. Y'all giving me a lot of names. Tony Wright, I see you threw a couple of names out there. I see you put Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. I really like him. I've seen some of his tape, and I really like him. He's another guy on the draft board. I haven't had a chance to check out that outside linebacker out of Penn State, Arnold. I haven't checked him out yet. And I haven't checked out the left guard, Cunningham from Arkansas. I haven't checked those guys out yet. And Zachary Carter, I have to check him out. I haven't had a chance to check him out, but I appreciate you guys continuing to give us names, because y'all giving me homework where I can go in, and y'all giving me more content that I can put out for you guys. But I have a bunch of names that I think will be solid guys as well. But I definitely will check some of these guys out as well. So I appreciate it, Tony. Let's see. And if you guys haven't already, please hit that like, hit that subscribe button for your boy. Share out the content. If you're just joining, you can watch it on the playback, because I will be jumping off in a couple of minutes. But I want to give you guys or answer a couple more questions here. And Mike said it. You said it best, man. The trenches. Yeah, we have to build the trenches. Like, it's a must. Anthony, he says, good show. I agree with you. Jordan Davis pick at 8. The Legion of Boom played a 4-3 defense. The Falcons need to switch to the 4-3 defense. Well, we know that we play multi-front. Like we can play 3-4, 4-3. Doesn't really matter. With Dean Pease. Dean Pease is one of those guys that's a defensive genius, guru, whatever you want to call it. He's been in the league for many moons at this point, probably longer than I've been alive. Dean Pease has been coaching on all levels of football. So Dean Pease is very good at mixing up the fronts. So it doesn't really matter whether it's 3-4, 4-3. Jordan Davis is a guy that I think a lot of people are sleeping on, because they think because of his size that he's only a 2-down lineman. But I think that Jordan Davis is a guy you can play on three downs if you need to. He's a guy that can rush from the middle, and you want to have that big guy pushing the pocket, so it creates opportunities for your edge rushers. So I definitely think that Jordan Davis wouldn't be a reach at 8. And like I said, Jordan Davis is probably the best defensive tackle in this draft. And a lot of the times I feel like the Falcons did a poor job when Thomas Dimitroff was here. They didn't value like the nose tackle position in general. They kind of just stumbled upon Grady Jarrett, because Grady Jarrett was not a high draft pick. I think Grady Jarrett was drafted in like the 5th round, if I'm not mistaken. He just came out of nowhere. In that Super Bowl year in 2016, Grady Jarrett just happened to, be a diamond in the rough type situation. So I definitely think that Jordan Davis wouldn't be a reach at 8. And like I said, if you look at the teams that consistently win and the teams that have those guys that are, the top defensive tackles in the game, most of them have Super Bowl rings. Fletcher Cox of the Eagles, one of the better defensive tackles in the league, has a Super Bowl. The kid from the Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones, he's played in multiple Super Bowls, has a Super Bowl title. If you look at Aaron Donald, just got a Super Bowl trophy. So if you have a consistent or a very good defensive tackle, they're usually that the foundation of a good defense. They always say you build, you look at it, they'll find out if a defense is really good. You look at right up the middle of the defense, you have to be solid. So defensive tackles, linebackers, safeties, you have to be solid right down the center of the defense. And right now, the Falcons, to me, you have the two linebackers with Deion Jones, Foyer. You have solid safeties with last year. To me, Harmon played really well. Deron Harmon. You drafted Richie Grant. You have Isaiah Oliver, who's a guy that's like a rover that can play safety, can play corners. You have AJ Terrell on that back end. So you have solid pieces, but I feel like you got to continue to fix the middle of that defense and fix the trenches. I feel like that's the biggest weakness or the Achilles heel of our Falcons is the middle. We know Tyler Davison was the weak link. We know other than Grady Jarrett, we really didn't have, consistent play until we brought in Mike Pennell and Anthony Rush. But even those guys, they're not really dominant nose tackles. I think if you get Jordan Davis, he'll be a dominant player where he'll be compared to the Fletcher Cox. He'll be compared to the Chris Jones of the world. He'll be one of those guys like the Haloti Nadas back in the day, like the Tony Saragusas. When you have those guys, they make everybody's job easier on the defense, even the secondary, because you're able to get home faster. So that's less time that your corners and safeties have to cover. So I definitely think you got to go out and get that foundational piece like Jordan Davis or a solid defensive tackle next to Grady is a must. Like you have to go out and bring in somebody that can help Grady Jarrett. Because at this point, we're just wasting, Grady Jarrett's prime years. Let's see. Larry says, Jew, what about Breeze Hall? I think he says he's a running back. Iowa State. I haven't actually had a chance to check him out, but I'll add him to the draft board as well. So all of these names, if you guys can do me a favor, I can always go back to the video. But if you guys on my last video or on any of one of my videos I do, just leave me a comment, DM me on Twitter, which you can find me at Jew Talk Sports on Twitter, and just DM me, let me know some of the guys you guys want me to look at. As far as the draft board, of course, I have names that I've already kind of started watching tape on, but I also would love to go in and take a look at some of the guys that you guys have watched or the players that you guys think will fit the Atlanta Falcons scheme. But with that being said, we have been on for over an hour. I like to keep it to an hour. So if you guys have, maybe I'll take maybe like two or three more questions if you guys have any more questions. And then after that, we're going to wrap it up because I do want to give you guys your Wednesday night back. But I appreciate you guys continuing to support your boy here at Jew Talk Sports. Please hit that subscribe, hit that like button, continue to share out my content. If you would like to be a part of my Jew Talk Sports membership, where you get content control, definitely go over to my page, hit that join button to become a member as well. But I appreciate each and every one of you guys as always. Bubble Gump, let's see what he says. Falcons switch formations, but he needs better bodies in the trenches and on the back end. Yeah, I agree. Like Dean Pease can only scheme up so much. I know, Dean Pease is a mastermind when it comes at drawing up plays, blitzing, and things of that nature. But he talked about it in the regular season, last season, that you have to have the guys in the trenches. Like those guys just have to develop. The guys that we have in the trenches, they have to be able to get home. You can't blitz on every down. You got to have a front four that can get home without pressure all the time. And that's something that Dean Pease talked about. When you're blitzing all the time, one thing that does is that leaves your secondary on the island. So if you blitz and you don't get home, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a completion or, a big play for the offense if you have to blitz to get pressure. So that's something that I'm looking forward to this year for the Falcons, is seeing if they can bring in those pass rushers and bring in better pass rushers so that they don't have to rely on Dean Pease dialing up pressure all the time. Like, I do believe that Dean Pease likes the blitz and he will dial up pressure at times. But last season, because nobody was getting home in the front four, he kind of had to dial up pressure a lot more than we should have, or he should have to. And at the point, we gave up a lot of third down conversions and things of that nature, and fourth down conversions, because Dean Pease had to sacrifice the back end to try to get home and get some pressure on the quarterback to get the quarterback off the spot. So at that point, I definitely think that you have to get better on the defensive side as far as the trenches. And let's see. Tony says, Jew, as far as free agency, I believe we should sign Dante Jackson from the Carolina Panthers to play as the number 2 corner to AJ Terrell, re-sign Isaiah Oliver at the nickel, and we have a young core or young defensive, young cornerback from the 2021. Yeah, I like Dante Jackson. I think Dante Jackson is solid. You guys know, when it comes to cornerbacks, I like guys that are technically sound. Dante Jackson is a pretty sound cornerback, and I like guys that are physical and not afraid to tackle. But I prefer cornerbacks, and Dean Pease prefers cornerbacks that has speed. You have to have speed to play in the NFL and to play, especially because it's a lot of freak athletes as far as these wide receivers, tall, lengthy, crazy vertical and stuff like that. So Dante Jackson is solid. I wouldn't mind seeing the Falcons bring him in, but it just depends on how much money he's looking for. If he's looking for a bag where he's asking for too much money, you may be better off just signing like somebody to like a 1-year deal, like we did with bringing in Fabian Monroe. You may be able to do that again, bring back Fabian Monroe, or go out and bring in a solid cornerback, like veteran cornerback. But if Dante Jackson, we can bring him in on a solid deal and he's not asking for too much money. I like Dante Jackson. I think he's a solid cornerback, and he definitely has speed for days. So he's a guy I can definitely see the Falcons looking at. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. I really appreciate each and every one of you guys tuning in tonight. Definitely stay tuned to the channel, because I'm gonna have a lot more coming for you guys this week. A lot more draft prospect videos. The next video that I'll be dropping is on George Pickens, the wide receiver out of the University of Georgia. You guys definitely got to go check his tape out. He did win a national title last year with Georgia, and he's very, very explosive. I was really impressed with his tape. So that'll be the next video I'll put out as far as my draft prospect videos. But you guys stay tuned, because I'm going to have a lot more videos coming back to back as far as these draft prospects. So stay tuned. Also, Atlanta Falcons news. Of course, I'll be dropping different things, and we'll see what the Falcons decide to do with Calvin Ridley in the next, in the offseason. We'll see who the Falcons bring back in free agency. We'll see who the Falcons go out and bring in free agency. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. I'll holler at you guys next Wednesday night. But as always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.